number 5, surprise. This footage, shot on an old camcorder, is pretty brief, but quite effective. As the camera person slowly shuffles over to their left in what appears to be beneath a bridge or some sort of industrial area next to some foliage, we slowly see the reveal of long, thin limbs. The more they shift out to the left, we start to see a tall, lanky body, and finally a distinctly round head. The camera person then seemingly drops to the ground, or onto their knees, with the footage going all static and then cutting entirely.
Coming in at number 4, we've got Lavender Town Syndrome. Pokemon fans are already probably quite familiar with this particular tale. There's an old creepypasta detailing these strange happenings that occurred shortly following the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan. Plenty of tales circulated saying that all sorts of Japanese children had killed themselves after playing these games, which what exactly was causing them to act in such a way was up in the air, but people began to theorize that it had something to do with Lavender Town. If you've heard the town theme, you probably understand why people came to that conclusion. It is a creepy, dismal tune. Discordant and unsettling, the song is definitely not the ideal backdrop for a kid's game. Some say there's a sinister tone hidden in there that causes kids' brains to act up. That bit is probably just creepypasta lore though. If nobody's found the true brown tone yet, I doubt there's a kill tone either. Now, all of this was obviously played up for creep factor. There weren't any game-breaking haunted glitches in Red and Green, but there were a few important events going on at the time that likely had an influence on the creation of this creepypasta. First, there was an episode of the Pokemon TV show that caused kids to have epileptic seizures. It was called Den no Senshi Porygon and involved a scene with some rapidly flashing lights and colors. These high-intensity images triggered reactions in hundreds of children watching. Add this unfortunate event to a spike in the Japanese suicide rate in the 90s and you have a double whammy of creepypasta material. Obviously, these incidents had really nothing to do with Pokemon the video game, but the ideas were planted in our collective minds and made for a very scary story. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Alice killings. I keep reading this one and want to make some sort of connection to Alice in Wonderland, but I can't seem to find anything substantial enough to make a really good link. However, the link between this tale and one of a real-life serial killer is hard to ignore. See, back in 2003, Alfredo Galán Sotillo killed 6 people and wounded 3. Eventually, he came to be known as a playing card killer. Can you guess why? He would leave playing cards with the bodies of his victims. Eventually, he did turn himself into the police, and now he's serving 142 years for his crimes. The idea of a serial killer having a motif is nothing new, but this was definitely a high-profile case and turned some heads. So when a creepypasta turned up with serial murders in between 1999 and 2005 featuring playing cards left with corpses, folks made the connection. In the Alice killings, there was also the fact that Alice was written in blood at the scene of each crime, but that's mostly window dressing that makes the tale unique in its own right. Let's hope that nobody gets inspired by either of these high-rolling serial killers. The last thing we need is more copycats. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Capgras Delusion. A lot of creepypastas make use of this rare psychological condition, even if they don't reference it directly. I'd be willing to bet that a lot actually don't even know about this delusion at all, but are still using bits and pieces in their own work. See, this is a condition where folks are convinced that the people around them have been replaced with exact duplicates. Exact to a degree, however. There are little things that are wrong that seem to tip them off into the direction. Think the hole in the ground as a good example of exactly how insane something like this can get. The delusion itself often manifests as part of another underlying mental disorder, dementia, schizophrenia, etc. It can make people react violently to old friends and loved ones, convincing them that they're doppelgangers trying to harm them. It's not surprising that this is a regularly occurring theme in creepypasta though. Doppelgangers and evil twins are well-established tropes in fiction. All throughout history, yarns about body doubles ruining lives have been spun. The horrifying lookalike that will act in ways meant to destroy you without anybody noticing. It brings questions of identity to the surface and makes people really worry about their place in the world. And so many creepypastas feature stuff like this. Whether it's a real clone or simply a delusion is up to you to figure out. There's the classic tale of the kid being called down by his mother only to be grabbed by his mother hiding in the closet. "Don't go down there," she says. I heard it too. Another twist in the tale is the kid who can't fall asleep. She tells her dad to look for monsters under the bed, and when he peers underneath, he's greeted by another daughter, claiming that there's something on top of my bed. And of course, there is the Capgras Delusion pasta itself, about a woman who was convinced that her younger brother had been replaced by someone else. After she died, her delusion was passed on to her partner, who then couldn't figure out if the boy was real or not. The mind is quite the fragile thing, don't you think? And finally, at number 1, we've got Slenderman, the poster boy for a creepypasta being taken too far, right into the real world. Slenderman is famous for many things. His infamy tends to stem from the stabbing that he inspired, however. This tall, pale, faceless man in a suit has been seen all over the place. Originating on something awful, the lanky lad was photoshopped into the backgrounds of photos, captioned with reports of disappearing children. His fame grew over the years with the help of popular web series and video games. As Slenderman went viral, he simultaneously became the face of internet horror. There was a period of time where nobody was doing anything other than talking about the horrific being. His powers were often exaggerated, but Slenderman was well known for brainwashing people, causing amnesia, inducing coughing fits, and making folks disappear. He would hide in the woods and stalk people from a distance, causing all sorts of weirdness to happen if anyone got too close. Two 12-year-old kids found out about Slenderman, and they took the online tale a little too seriously. They wanted to become his proxies and were convinced that if they didn't kill someone, he would come and harm their family. After some deliberation, these kids decided that they would kill their best friend. Stabbing her 19 times and leaving her for dead, they hoped that Slenderman himself would welcome them into his forested mansion. No such thing happened, as Slenderman indeed is a fictional character. The victim actually managed to drag herself to a road nearby where she was found by a cyclist and rushed to the hospital. The two attackers were arrested but found not guilty by mental disease or defect. They are now serving long periods of time in mental health institutions. You have to wonder if Slenderman had all that much to do with the attack or if something was going on beforehand. Either way, it's a cautionary tale about kids' media habits and choosing friends wisely.
Coming in at number 5, Abandoned by Disney. That's right, the first creepypasta I'm hitting you with is a Disney-related one, hence the clip at the beginning of this video. So after the 1967 animated version of The Jungle Book came out, it was a hit, and Disney decided to begin construction on a jungle-themed resort. In the late 90s, they got to work on this park that would be located in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. The park cost $30 million to build, and it was going to be called Mowgli's Palace. A year later, when Disney was almost finished completing the park, they decided to pull the plug on the whole thing. They left the nearly completed project intact, the gates were chained up, and within days the park was abandoned. And now we get to the creepypasta part. Christopher Wolf shared his pictures and stories of the abandoned park online. So, a few years ago, the park was locked up and Chris decided to break in and check it out. When he got there, he could see a lot of broken locks and some sections of barriers were broken down as well. Once on the grounds, he said that he could feel something was off about this place. There was a bunch of graffiti that always said the same 3 words, abandoned by Disney. Shortly after entering the park, he started to hear whispers, but he thought it was in his head and he continued on to the Central Palace. Once there, he ventured deep into the lobby and saw a stairwell leading down to the only part of the whole park that wasn't defaced. It was a tiny door that said mascots only. He entered the room and went down a long hallway to a door that said character prep 1. He tried to open the door, but it was sealed tight. He turned around to walk away, but then heard a popping sound. He turned back around and noticed the door was now slightly open, so he went inside. In the room, he saw several Disney costumes hung on hooks, except for the Mickey costume, which was left slumped on the floor. He then noticed that the Donald costume was more decomposed than the others. He tried to lift the costume, but then something large dropped out of the headpiece and shattered at his feet. It didn't take long for him to realize that the object that fell was a human skull. Terrified, he dropped the Donald costume, turned around to run out the door, but when he turned around, the Mickey costume was in an upright position blocking the door. Terrified, he tried throwing the person in the costume off by taking a flash picture. It was then that Mickey said in a hushed voice, "Hey, wanna see my head come off?" Christopher ran from the room. He said he blacked out and he can't fully remember how he got out, but luckily he did. Some people have said that this is a hoax, but others believe him as they themselves have some weird stories from the park. But this picture going around online of Mickey definitely scared a lot of people.
In at number 4, getting chased. This footage begins with the camera person filming a young boy sitting on a couch, using his laptop. They then turn around, and then down the hall behind them appears who else but good old Slenderman. This is when things get utterly chaotic. The camera person screams, appears to fall, and then scrambles to get away. The camera cuts to black a few times, and then the image reappears, with the camera facing down another hallway, and the long, lanky body of Slenderman moving slowly towards them. We can hear off screen someone telling the camera person to get out, to run down the street, and to go. It's actually pretty freaky. And at number 3, Grandpa gets stalked. While it's commonly believed that Slenderman typically targets children or young adults, here we have a video of an alleged Slenderman sighting in which an older male is being stalked by the paranormal figure. Appearing on the YouTube channel Real Paranormal Videos with a 2015 copyright trademark that reads Mary Genocide's Paranormal Videos, the video starts off with footage of outdoor Christmas decorations. Just a lovely little holiday jaunt. Eventually the cameraman, presumably Mary's grandfather, stops by a small festive looking gazebo. He pans to the left, and then goes back to the gazebo in which we see the first sighting of Slenderman, standing in front of the structure but clearly towering over it. The camera then goes static, and the footage resumes, but noticeably more chaotic. The cameraman is running now, and we hear wind whipping by him. Finally he arrives back at what we can only assume is his house. He turns around and we see nothing behind him, but as he goes for the front door, he turns around once more, and that's when we see Slenderman for a second time. The video goes static again, and cuts out. And at number 2, Christine Hamlet. This number is a bit different than the others on our list. Rather than video footage, footage, it's an image. But where the image comes from is what makes it stand out compared to your typical, clearly photoshopped snaps that feature Slendy in them. This photo was taken by a medium the name of Christine Hamlet in the woods of Cannock Chase, Stratfordshire. She had gone to the area after 4 sightings of Slenderman had been reported. Hamlet claims that she had been traveling around those woods for months, taking photos and investigating other paranormal activities, and this discovery in this photo was chilling and out of the ordinary compared to her other findings. She told the press, I quote, "I couldn't believe it. It could well be him. It would make sense after all of these other sightings." Now, one of those sightings that she mentioned is from a man named Pi Green, who said he saw Slenderman after awakening around 2 a.m. by an odd scratching noise in his bedroom. He got out of bed and found himself facing the Slenderman floating over him, who disappeared momentarily afterwards. And finally, in at number 1, April 20th, 1996. Now this footage, while some claim is from the 80s, is taken from the inside of a car as it drives along the road in the dead of night. Now at the bottom of the screen you'll notice that the date is April 20th, 1996 at 9:06 p.m. It's also worth noting that a lot of old digital cameras from around that time are pretty unreliable when it comes to the date if the user didn't actually bother to enter it incorrectly. Anywho, as this person is driving along, they spot something blocking the road and swerve to try to get around it. Now from a distance you can see it has a white face, and as they approach, its limbs become more apparent. After they swerve, they turn back to Slenderman, and that's when the footage freezes. A battery low warning appears on the screen. What makes this one so chilling compared to some of the other videos on our list, or other ones that have surfaced in general, is the fact that its visibility is just clear enough to really make out the shape of Slenderman in a way that the being doesn't look all that fake. It's pretty eerie.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Smiling Man. We've all been there. It's late at night and you're walking around somewhere public. You might be with friends, or you might be totally alone. Out of the darkness, an unfamiliar figure appears. Sometimes they walk on by, slightly creeping you out. Other times, they stare intently at you, leaving you scared silly. There's even occasions when they might follow you for lengthy periods of time, intermittently doing weird stuff or shouting out nonsense. It could be a harmless person having a rough night, but the chance of them being someone who wouldn't think twice about harming you is a tough bet to make. Apparently, the creepypasta The Smiling Man is based on just such an encounter, and plenty of similar encounters have happened since. So the story of the Smiling Man goes a little something like this. There was a person who used to like going on late night walks. They would stroll around their city while their roommates slept, taking in the sights and sounds of a nighttime metropolis. Usually parks and streets would be more or less empty, and this was especially true on that fateful night. Taking note of how extra empty everything seemed, they enjoyed the peaceful stroll. However, out of the darkness came a strange man. This gentleman was wearing a suit and an especially wide grin. At first, he sort of dance-walked towards the storyteller. Unsettled, they decided to walk away from the man. But he persisted, at first continuing to dance walk before performing more cartoonish actions like an exaggerated sneaking motion. The Smiling Man followed our protagonist for blocks and blocks, keeping perfect pace with them, all the while smiling away. I don't think I know a single person who would be unbothered by this. Eventually they stopped in the street and demanded to know why he was following them, and at that point he turned around and started dance walking away. But then he turned around and chased the author. Running away as fast as they could, they eventually ditched the Smiling Man, and let's just say they never went out alone after that.
At number 4, the Russian sleep experiment. When this image made its way online, people were freaking out. Back in the late 1940s, Russian researchers thought it would be a good idea to keep people awake for 30 days straight using an experimental gas-based stimulant. These people were kept in a sealed environment so their oxygen intake could be safely monitored. The researchers needed to make sure the gas didn't kill them as it was toxic in high concentrations. Also, it's important to note that the test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during the World War II. The people who did this experiment were also volunteers, as they were promised their freedom if they took part, but they were never really going to let them go. For the first 5 days, things were going fine. After day 5, the test subjects began to demonstrate severe paranoia. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming randomly for hours on end. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something that they originally said they wouldn't. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives, as they were afraid they either died or were vegetables, as they were not making any noise. That day, the chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air. And immediately once this happened, the test subjects begged for the gas to be turned back on. They were now dependent on it. They had turned mad and parts of their bodies were ripped apart by the strain of the experiment. Their abdominal organs below the ribcage were removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. It also quickly became apparent that they were digesting their own flesh, that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of a few days. Yeah, that's a really disturbing one. Especially since it's been proven that human prisoners were used as test subjects throughout history. At number 3, Capgras Delusion. One of the really popular motifs in creepypastas is that of the doppelganger, which for those of you who don't know is a double or evil twin of a living person. This doppelganger seeks to replace the original. One of the most powerful creepypastas of this type is only 2 sentences long, and it goes like this. I began tucking him into bed and he tells me, "Daddy, check the monsters under my bed." I look underneath his bed for his amusement and see him, another him, under the bed staring back at me, quivering and whispering, "Daddy, there's somebody on my bed." This is a very real and very terrifying disorder known as Capgras Delusion. It's the root of many doppelganger creepypastas. The delusion typically manifests as part of another underlying mental disorder, such as dementia or schizophrenia, and causes the afflicted to react violently towards loved ones that they believe have been replaced with an imposter. Coming out at number 2, Jeff the Killer. Yeah, Jeff the Killer. If you've never laid eyes on this image of Jeff, then consider yourself lucky. But I'm gonna show it to you now anyway. Basically, it's said Jeff is a serial killer who hides in the closets of his victims and whispers out, "Go to sleep," before killing everyone in the household. What's even creepier is his appearance. His face is smooth and pale, and he always has a huge creepy grin on his face, and small eyelashes that have no lids. He's easily one of, if not the most recognizable creepypastas. His image has appeared on thousands of forums. In his origin story, it's said that he was in a fight and somehow chemicals burned his face and caused him to go insane. After this, he murdered his family and disappeared into the night to make guest appearances in your nightmares. So many people have claimed to see Jeff and yet somehow escaped. So I mean, you never know. He could be real. Coming in at number 1, Slenderman. This is one I've read all too much about. He's definitely haunted the forums of the internet. Slenderman is a tall, skinny man who has a white, featureless face. He wears a finely pressed suit and has extremely long limbs. Slenderman is said to prey on children in particular, but also those who become obsessed with his existence. Many people have claimed that they have seen this shadowy figure off in the distance, most commonly spotted in the woods, while some say that the Slenderman himself has rung their doorbells. It's said if you do see Slenderman, then he will start to stalk your life. He will look at you throughout your windows as you're sleeping and follow you everywhere. One person who made this claim is a popular YouTuber named Shane Dawson. In one of his urban legend and creepypasta videos, he talked about his own personal experience with Slenderman. There have also been stories in the news of teenagers killing their friends because they claim Slenderman told them to do so. Another teen set her house on fire because Slenderman told her to do so. So yeah, a lot of bizarre stories happening around this creepypasta.